Welcome to the ACC Northeast Ask the Experts. Today we're speaking with Brenda Fingold, a certified mindfulness teacher who has presented various programs on lawyer well-being for the ACC. We've asked Brenda to talk about her career transition from litigator to mindfulness teacher, her search for balance, and our thoughts about what members of the ACC can do during these challenging times to find their best lives and sustain health and well-being. Brenda has been teaching mindfulness and well-being strategies for 2 decades. She's a certified mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher and has directed workplace and leadership education programs at the mindfulness centers at the Brown University School of Public Health and the University of Massachusetts Medical School. Previously, she spent 17 years at the Boston law firm of Hale and Dorr, now Wilmerhale, where she was a litigator and a partner responsible for training and professional development. Brenda, during your 17 years as a litigator, how did you deal with the constant pressures and competitive environments?
Actually, not well. I think I was anxious and stressed from my summer associate year. So this was back in 1983, and I spent 17 years there, pretty much stressed and anxious the whole time. By all accounts, I was doing great work and successful, moving up through the firm, and I had no idea what to do about the anxiety and the stress and the fatigue. I didn't know what to do, and I also felt even if I knew what to do, I had no time to do it. And I actually remember, so I was a young associate at that time, I remember hanging up the phone on my father. "Dad, this is just how it is when you're a lawyer, click." And I honestly had no idea that there could be another way of being in the law. And, there were a few things I did. I did start practicing yoga, which was helpful for me. At least it got me in my body, since so much of the time I felt like I was a talking head. I looked for opportunities that felt nourishing to me. So I volunteered as a court-appointed special advocate at CASA and worked with abused and neglected children. I sought out pro bono work. I really loved my time at the firm, mentoring, working on the summer program, being involved in hiring. So I sought out a lot of those opportunities, which helped me to have a little bit of balance of the stress and anxiety and some things that really felt good for me personally. But I know, Court, that you're going to ask me a lot of questions about what I've done since, and all of that is a result of spending 17 years realizing that I had no idea what to do about this, and I didn't think there was anything. So that's the answer on how I dealt with it.
You were diagnosed with cancer. How did this diagnosis impact you and your life?
Well, the diagnosis was absolutely life-changing, as many people will say after a crisis. But for me at the time, so I had been at my law firm for 17 years. I had a 3-year-old at home. I was 40 years old. My main symptom was exhaustion, but who isn't exhausted, especially when you're a full-time professional with a young child at home? And out of the blue, I was diagnosed with colon cancer, had a major surgery, and was looking towards 7 months of chemotherapy once a week. So it was a big treatment plan. And I remember getting home from the hospital and sitting down and thinking, that didn't work. I went to a good law school. I joined a great firm. I actually liked what I was doing. I was doing good work, and I couldn't sustain it at all. It didn't work. And at that point, I decided I was going to figure it out, like a good lawyer, right? I'm going to figure this out. And I've spent 20 years trying to figure it out. And really what I figured out is there's no one answer to any of this. But at that point, I began to realize that I needed to live my life in a different way, and I needed to learn how to do that. I spent my 7 months of chemo doing reflecting, doing a little bit of mindfulness. And in fact, I had brought John Kabat-Zinn, the creator of the Mindfulness-Based stress reduction curriculum that I teach now, and that is actually the most widely researched and taught curriculum in the world. But I had brought him in 1998, 1998 and 1999 to my law firm to work with us stressed out lawyers. The irony is our managing partner asked me to do it, and I said, no way, everybody's going to laugh at us and roll their eyes. And it took my managing partner 3 weeks of nudging me before I said fine. So by the time I had my diagnosis, I already had been introduced to mindfulness. And so I began doing that, a little more yoga, just trying to feel some solid support for this very scary place that I was in. I did go back to the office after I'd been home, and I lasted about 9 months. I cried a lot of that time. I think the difference between being sick and surrounded by love and friends and comfort, and then I was back in my full-time job. Not that there's anything wrong with that job, it's just I could see how different the feel was, and that I couldn't figure out how to find some balance between the work self and what I really needed in my life, both for healing and just for me as a human being. And so after about 9 months, I made the decision to leave. So I left in August of 2011. We put off my going away party till September. And a lot of the people, when I said goodbye, a lot of my colleagues couldn't understand how could I be leaving this large, prestigious law firm. And all I could tell them at that time was, I want to become a yoga teacher. And it didn't make much sense to anybody. I packed everything up. I left at the end of August thinking, all this light coming in, and then 9/11 happened. And it was quite a time. And by the time I got back in September for the going away party, pretty much everybody who had expressed surprise and disbelief about why I would do it had a different feeling that, this life is precious and it's fragile, and listening to our own needs and desires is important, regardless of how it may look to the rest of the world. So yes, my diagnosis and the treatment changed me tremendously and led to a whole new career and new choices and a new way of being in the world.
You decided to go back to school and study theology. No one thought this was a good idea, but you knew it was. How?
Okay, well, so I should say, to explain why theology, one of the things that began to sustain me during my recovery and during the years after my diagnosis was a sense of spirituality. I found it really through yoga. I became a certified Kripalu yoga teacher, and that was very supportive and satisfying to me. And really what I wanted to do was help relieve suffering. And I think part of that was my own. We teach what we most need to learn, right? Part of that was my own, and also to take what I was learning and offer it to others. And there was something about pastoral counseling, about theology school, that seemed like it would address in a more mainstream way how we can support each other to thrive and not suffer. And I thought actually that what I wanted to do was hospice chaplaincy. So this was my new career. What did I want to do? And to be honest with you, I was so burnt out, and I felt uh, so afraid that I would lose myself if I tried to go back to a big corporate job, that it started to feel like the only thing really left for me. And here I am at, 45, 50. The only thing left for me was holding dying people's hands. And what's so different from being a lawyer is you can't fix them. So you're not even trying to fix them, and you can't fail in trying to fix them. And I think the fixing thing I couldn't do anymore. So that was the intention to go back. And everybody thought I was nutty. In part, I still have a student loan now. It was $40,000 for this 3-year master's degree. And if I got the degree and became a chaplain, the average salary of a chaplain is 30 to 40,000. So it didn't make a lot of sense to people. I also had been running my own business at the time. I was raising my daughter, and I had a part-time business I called Back to Balance. Of course, here I am trying to get back to balance, and then trying to take everybody with me who wants to. So it looked like a very strange choice to people. And I had 2 funny experiences. One is I did a program on career choices. It was actually a wonderful program where you become your own CDO, Chief Dream Officer. So we had hours in this group of coming up with what we really wanted to do, our deepest knowings. And I think the facilitator got kind of annoyed with me because we were at the end and I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. So this was weighing pretty heavily on me. And the turning point came when I met with a career coach. And we decided I had 3 options. One was to build up my business. So I'd been running my business word of mouth. I had no website. I didn't do any marketing. So I could build it up. I could create a website. I could write newsletters and do all that kind of stuff. Or I could get a job. Probably all of you have thought the same thing, or most of you, this idea of like, I could just get a job. I could work 9 to 5, where you take nothing home, you don't get stressed out, you just do your job and you leave. So that was one option. And the third option was I could go to divinity school, continue my part-time work, but mostly go to divinity school. And ultimately, as we discussed it, the career coach looked at me and said, I think you should start to build your business. You already have part of it, go for it. And whoa, did I get angry. Like, I remember looking at her saying, but I told you what I really want to do is go to divinity school. And I realized in that moment that this was perfect. Meeting with a career counselor who tells you something that doesn't work for you is a surefire way to figure out what it is you do want. And I knew in that moment that I didn't know why. So this is important. I didn't know why I wanted to go to divinity school, but I knew I had to. It was that pull. And in fact, when I was at my law firm, I actually changed positions. I didn't mention this before, and I should have, I guess, but I actually moved from my litigation practice to become the partner responsible for training and professional development. So I was no longer practicing law. I was now doing all of the things I loved. So I was training, I was mentoring, I was involved in all of that. But I didn't even know that was going to exist. And one day I was at a partners meeting, and out of the blue, our managing partner announced that the firm was going to create a position for someone to run training and professional development. And my heart was pounding out of my body. And I wanted to run right up and say, I want it. And I thought, no, I'm going to wait until the morning and then I'll go talk to him. And by morning, I was sure everybody at the firm wanted it, which of course they didn't. And I showed up at 8 a.m. at this managing partner's office and said, please, this is my job. So I raise this now because even then, there was this feeling. this is mine. I hear it and I know it. And so here it was again with the divinity school. I had no idea why. It was a little harder to figure out. There was no moment of my heart pounding, but I guess when the career coach recommended I do the business, I knew, nope, I'm going to divinity school. And what's so important to say, especially for those of you who are wondering, who you are, what is it you want in your life? Um, it turned out that I didn't become a chaplain or a hospice chaplain or do anything with my pastoral studies degree. It turned out, as best I can tell, that the 3 years of divinity school was the bridge to get me back into the business world. And after years of working with women's groups about health and nutrition and spirituality and yoga, I suddenly had deadlines and I had to write papers and I had to take tests and all of that fear and not being perfect and would I be able to do it, all of that kind of got triggered from my law school and law firm days. And very slowly I remembered, oh wow, I can write these papers and I can take these tests and do well and meet deadlines and fit back into a structure. And it was after that my corporate job came in from UMass Medical School, and I knew I could take it, and I'm not sure I could have imagined being able to take it if I had not had those 3 years. So um, I guess maybe this is a lot about this subject, but I guess what I want to say is I had no idea why. I just knew. And it turned out to be exactly what I needed to bring me to what I now consider my calling. That at 50 years old, I found my calling. And so things are not linear, right? Sometimes the path is pretty swirly. So
Would you please explain what is your P voice and how do you listen to it?
okay, so first of all, it's not my P voice because that sounds funny. It's our. We all have a P voice. So, and I can't believe I mentioned this to you and that you are interested in hearing it. So, but I did offer this concept to all of the groups that I worked with over the years. And it relates to being able to hear those deeper voices, in particular, the deeper needs. So, what I would say to people is, we all have a P voice. We'll be sitting at our desk and suddenly somewhere we hear, I have to pee. But, maybe we're busy typing something or we're on a phone call or we just don't have time to get up. And then that voice gets a little louder. Hey, hey, I have to pee. You begin to notice I have to pee. And oftentimes you still don't go because there's other things to do. And for many of us, by the time it finally yells at us, we are, you go, you go. And I had a teacher once who said, answer the call on the first ring, that this voice, that voice is the voice of a need. I have to go to the bathroom. It's a need. And over time, so many of us have learned to block out those needs that we barely hear them, or if we do hear them, we don't even have a pattern of responding right away. And so when I talk about the P voice, it's really in the context of saying that voice gets very quiet, but that voice is the same voice that says, I used to love to play piano. Oh, I'd love to do that again. Or I enjoyed painting or hiking. I forgot I loved to hike for 10 years. How do we forget what we love? But it's that same voice. So I use this concept of the P voice to say, start to listen and start to respond to it. And of course, at that moment, no matter what group I was in the middle of a sentence, everybody gets up and goes to the bathroom because everybody realized they had to pee. But but that's it. And so the more we begin to hear the voice, whatever it is, I need a nap. I mean, how often we don't listen, or maybe we don't even hear it, or we ignore it, the voice that says, I'm so tired. And so the more we start listening to the small voices, whether it's I have to go to the bathroom, or I need a nap, or I'm hungry, right? That voice of hunger that so often we don't hear anymore, we are strengthening the ability to hear the bigger voices and the scarier voices. I need to do something different with my life, or I need to cut back hours, or whatever it is that may bring great joy on the other side of listening, but that can be really scary. Um, so if you haven't already left this video to go pee, just noticing even a little more, and mindfulness helps with this. The voices, the intelligent voices, the knowing inside of us, always whispering. Let me give you one other example. So often when I'm leading programs for lawyers or business people, I'll begin leading a guided meditation, and within a minute, I see this from many people. All this moving. And I always have to ask about it and joke a bit at the end that mindfulness doesn't make the body hurt. But when we get quiet, the body can say, oh, thank goodness, they've sat down, they've stopped. And now I can say, my back hurts or my shoulders hurt. And so it's that same thing, right? How often are you aware, kind of out here in the others, that the back hurts or the shoulders hurt, and yet somehow it doesn't land? Like, wow, my back is really sore. I need to stand up and maybe do a little swaying or stretching. It just doesn't. We hear it, but we don't hear it. So practice with that, and even if all you do is with the P voice, it will ripple out into other voices that you really do want to hear for your well-being and your health.
Your journey led you back to the corporate environment. How do you feel about going back?
So the truth is, I was terrified of going back. Absolutely terrified. I was scared I would lose myself again. And I really did feel like I had totally lost connection to myself. I will always remember a quote. I'm pretty sure it came from Vernee Myers, a wonderful diversity consultant who used to work with us in Boston. And I'm not sure if it's hers or she got it from someone, but she made this comment about, we drive to work and we park our car and we leave the window open, a crack, so the part of us we have to leave behind can breathe while we go into the office. Even repeating it brings some emotion up, because that, some part of us is in this car just breathing out of a crack. And for me, it felt like I forgot to leave the window open and nobody could breathe in there. And so the fear was that I would go back and lose myself again. And I actually spent about 10 years with all of my colleagues and friends helping me come up with interesting ideas for what I could do, and I couldn't move. It's that stuck feeling. It all sounded great, and I couldn't move. I know now that that was a P voice too, that inability to do it was a signal that I wasn't yet ready to, because I didn't know how to go back into that environment. And so I'm going to say something, but I want to start by saying we know that our work culture, not just the legal profession, but our work culture, I believe, is broken. It needs major systemic changes, because no matter how hard we try to be whole and live full lives, it is really hard in the way our workplaces are structured. So I'm not saying that it's our own issue of why we have a hard time. I definitely am not saying that. However, what I began to learn was that we take ourselves wherever we go, right? So it occurred to me that I would probably be a really stressed out elevator operator. I was a stressed out yoga teacher when I started. You would have thought I was doing my first Supreme Court argument. The amount of fear over saying, "Hi, I'm Brenda Fingold, I'm your yoga teacher. Lift your arms up." So I started to get some hints that part of this was inside of me. And, I say this next part with it's true and it's sad and it's funny. The joke was I left Hale and Dorr, and the first thing I did was become a yoga teacher. And my husband said, after a while, "I don't understand this. You're making no money and you're just as stressed, and it's like Hale and yoga." And I thought, oh my gosh, I went from Hale and Dorr to Hale and yoga. Well, then I was in divinity school. I did a chaplaincy internship. I was in a hospital for a semester doing this pastoral counseling work. And my supervisor, who saw the rate at which I was working, the hours, the intensity, the perfectionist, and I had told her my story. And she said, "Oh, Brenda, I have a fear that you've just created Hale and chaplaincy." Ah, right? And so I was learning more and more. And this is, I think, this effort of understanding how to live with ease, with less suffering, how to thrive and find meaning is a lifetime journey, a very beautiful lifetime journey that there isn't we've mastered it and we're done. But when I first got the offer to go to UMass Medical School, Center for Mindfulness, I had to put a suit back on, and I was back in the corporate world, and that's what I was hired for, right? To go in and work with lawyers and judges, the people who made me the most afraid, right? Back when I was practicing. And I began to see the beginnings of Hale and mindfulness. And I have been very successful. I love what I do, but I could see this is me. This is me, and that this is my journey. And my job is to unpack the distorted expectations of how perfect I had to be, even that anybody could be perfect, or what would happen if I actually made a mistake. And all of these things were still here. They weren't quite as loud and distressing as they were in the law firm where the stakes are so high, but they were still very painful. And that's when I really began to do this deep work of what's going on inside of me and how can I shift how I am in the world so it's not so painful. And so I've been both at UMass and at Brown, and each day I am more and more surprised at what's possible within me that I never thought was possible before. So yeah, I don't even remember what you asked me. I think you asked me about back in the corporate environment, but yes, I wound up there. And even though it was mindfulness, I did find a way to make it intense. And thankfully, I loved and love what I'm doing. So it was a little less challenging. And it has changed dramatically over time from practice.
How can an in-house counsel in today's world be successful professionally and have a good well-being?
So let me put two thoughts together. One is to talk about what is this well-being, because it's really hard to talk about how do we have well-being or balance if we really can't even define it. So let me talk a little bit about what I think it is, and then some ways that you might be able to cultivate it with the same energy and attention and value that we give to our work. So I spent years trying to figure out what well-being is, or balance. At the time, my company was back to balance, so it was about what is balance. And I struggled. I tried every balance strategy and template. I read everything and just couldn't figure it out. And ultimately, I landed on Justice Potter Stewart's 1964 Supreme Court decision on the test for obscenity. and many of you probably already know it in your mind. It's already come up. I know it when I see it. So my definition of balance and well-being for myself and what I started sharing is I'll know it when I see it. And considering that being a human being is hard and complex, and our world is increasingly complex and chaotic, that if more often than not, I feel pretty good about how I'm living my life and the choices I'm making, hallelujah, right? I mean, what really can we expect out of a human life? And so what I was saying, what I was teaching is if more often than not, you feel pretty good about your choices in your life, yeah, that's great. Enjoy it, imprint that, feel into it. I did, though, have an opportunity to talk to somebody who gave me a caveat that felt really important that I just didn't see, which is, but what about the fact that so many of us have distorted beliefs about how good we have to be or what a good life looks like, or, if it's a good life and I'm supposed to keep the house clean, take care of the kids, they're perfect, my work's perfect, I'm getting promoted, well, then it could be very easy to say, no, more often than not, I don't feel good. And at the same time, be in a life that is filled with the conditions for happiness. And so to me, that felt really important, that in addition to looking at our life and figuring out if more often than not we're actually okay, is doing this hard work of understanding our belief systems and if they are interfering with that, because most of us have some pretty screwy beliefs. It was clear to me that I have standards of perfection that nobody could ever meet, and I was holding myself to it and everybody else. And so those are good things to work with. So let's assume that that's well-being and balance, and then we have work. I haven't thought about this, so I haven't said it before, but it just occurred to me now as we're talking that our culture doesn't value as much as work doing no thing. And I'm not saying nothing, because we think of nothing as we're not doing anything, but doing no thing, just sitting and watching the birds, or playing, or whatever it is that would give us a sense of balance and well-being. We don't understand it as much. And for me, as somebody who got pretty much all or most of my satisfaction, not all, most of my satisfaction from my work, that's where the affirmation would come from, and the creativity. When you're raising a child, sometimes you get the opposite of that, at least until they grow up and realize you weren't so bad. But I realized, one day I'm on vacation in Cape Cod and I have a message on my tape from an HR person at Reebok wanting me to come in and do an 8-week program. And oh, I was so excited. This is so great. And I realized I was more excited about this great job and what it meant than going to the beach for the day. And so part of it is recognizing that the culture doesn't value self-care and playing and just sitting or being. And so we have to really feel into how important this really is. And so what I would say in terms of trying to have, you don't need to leave a career. If I knew all of this then, maybe I would still be practicing, right? But what to do? My first recommendation is to make time to reflect on your values, what matters to you, what you need, and know that it changes. But right now, you might need rest, or you might need that vacation you've been putting off, or need more time with your family or loved ones. Maybe that's not working as well as you want. But that takes time. And if any of you remember the old Stephen Covey matrix of urgent and important and not urgent, what often happens is our days are filled with reacting to urgent matters. Now, urgent and important matters, there's water in the basement, a deadline is due, all of those things are urgent and important, and they're good to react and respond to immediately. Then there's urgent and not important, and most of those feel important, like a ringing phone or a text that comes in. Hello. I'll answer spam calls before I'll realize, why did I pick it up? I didn't have to pick it up, right? I'll joke about if you've planned to do some exercise in the morning and you get up early, but you walk by the laundry or the dishes in the sink. And for many of us, it's like the dishes yell, clean me now, or do the laundry. And before you know it, you have already lost the half hour you've set aside. So recognizing that we're in this perpetual state of triage, just reacting to everything that feels urgent. And where do we go next? For many of us, we're exhausted. So where we go next is to Covey's quadrant 4, which is just numbing. It's not urgent and not important. But I will say that taking time, numbing out, staring at TV, whatever, social media, there's benefit to that, to distraction. I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but for many of us, we get so tired that that's all we can do. And I am no stranger to 3 episodes of Law and Order SVU, or, whatever it is that I've turned to numb out. But what gets lost in all of this is the quadrant that's not urgent, but incredibly important. Reflecting on our lives and what we need and what's working and not working, what we want in our future, what do we love to do? If you take nothing away from this, but I need to spend more time doing what I love to do, yay, you will feel different just from that. And so relaxation, self-care, leisure time, all of that fits into that category of exceptionally important, but not generally urgent until it is. Like I got a diagnosis, like somebody who gets fired, or a family member gets sick, or a crisis, which is why in crisis, many of us have this major shift, this major rotation of our consciousness and our intention. And what I always try to say is you don't need to wait for a crisis, that you can do small things. Small things. If you think of the trajectory of this is what you're doing and you keep doing it and you go in this direction, if you make one teeny change over time, something major happens. So besides making time to reflect, I'd say take small steps. Maybe take a 5-minute walk, or, if you have an instrument, do 5 minutes. Just sit with the piano, your guitar, your ukulele, or sing. Play one song and dance to it. Don't make it big. If you make it big, it will fall off and we won't do it. The author and Massachusetts native Abby Seixas wrote a book called Finding the Deep River Within, about finding balance and meaning in life. And she has a phrase, the disease of 1,000 things to do, which I love. She also talks about to-do list-itis. If you look at mindfulness or any of these well-being strategies as just another thing to do, well, who wants to? So start with 2 minutes or 1 minute a day, or just, touch your yoga mat and walk away. But that is moving in the right direction. And remember that it's going to feel uncomfortable. It is different. And part of what I value so much about mindfulness isn't about learning how to relax ourselves. It's essentially about how to be with all of our human life, the comfortable and pleasant, and the uncomfortable and the boring. And so it's in my stretch zone to to set up a vacation or to take time to play my guitar or go for a hike when I know I have work due. And I have to learn to tolerate that this changing of habits is uncomfortable. Like new shoes, right? Your old shoes don't fit very well. You get new shoes, you really like them, but it takes a little bit to break in. That's what it is with these new habits. So those, and rest. I think we need more sleep than any of us can even imagine. And that's when the body heals. So I guess those are some ideas for what you can do now and what I'm doing now.
Brenda, there is so much anger, pain, and frustration in the world right now. What's a good way that we can deal with this anger?
Okay, thank you for that question. I hope I can offer something of value here. So, first, I would actually recommend that you practice mindfulness, even if it's a couple of minutes a day. And I'll talk before we end this about some resources available, but the daily formal practice of choosing to cultivate present moment awareness, to train the muscles of our mind to be able to choose where we focus our attention. And we might decide to focus our attention in the past. We can decide to, when we're feeling really awful, call up loving, happy memories. Like that's a resource that we have inside. We might notice that our minds keep going to the future and ruminating. And that's what one of the bigger problems here is that our minds, our brains like certainty, and they will do anything to get certainty. They just want to figure it out. And we are living at a time where there are no answers. And what answers come out change the next day, whether it's about the social unrest, whether it's about the pandemic, or about everything else, our jobs and family and health, all of it is up in the air, right? And so our brains are going to try to figure things out. What if this? What if that? And that causes enormous stress and anxiety and anger and fear. And so by practicing, we learn to notice, oh, I'm caught up in a habit loop of rumination, not just lost ruminating, but you notice it. And the practice allows us, even though it's hard sometimes, to come back to, okay, in this one moment, well, it's not too humid here, and I'm sitting having a conversation with people I care about, and in this one moment, it's okay. So part of this practice is just being somewhere where there is less of those hard feelings. Also, from this present moment, we can look at the anger. And I know there's so much anger on so many levels. We can look at the anger and the sadness, grief, with perspective. So we can both feel it, and mindfulness is about actually being able to turn toward this discomfort and be with it so that we can learn from it and we can make choices that are based on the present moment and not all the other times we were angry, sad, frustrated, because all of these feelings still live within us. And so it allows us to be more wise. It allows us to access compassion for other people. And we are certainly in a world where kindness and compassion is so necessary, but compassion for ourselves. So every once in a while, when I'm feeling really awful or I'm feeling really angry, it's almost like a little miracle inside. Something inside of me says, oh, I'm sorry, it hurts, or you're not feeling well. And sometimes I'll look around like, where did that come from? And it was my having cultivated a part of me that can also be angry and compassionate for how awful it feels and how hard it is to be angry and to know what to do, or to be sad and know what to do. So mindfulness is helping us to be with these feelings. There's a phrase that I really appreciated for me as I was learning this, which is, we can feel our feelings without becoming our feelings or getting lost in those feelings. So it's not about stuffing them or being disconnected. It's fully there, and there's some space around it and perspective, being able to see that feelings change when we're with feelings. Rather than pushing them away or fighting with them, we actually notice that feelings arise and they fall away, and they rise and they fall away. And that actually our days are a mix, really, of pleasant moments, unpleasant moments, and boring or neutral moments. And just recognizing that if we can let them all flow through without getting so caught up in them, things feel easier. We're not so stuck in some of that. And that's not to say we don't have reasons to be angry and reasons to be sad. We absolutely do. And they're very human. Mindfulness is not getting rid of anger. All humans have this. We have all of this. And in fact, a phrase, I think from Lao Tzu, is a human life is 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. So we're not going to get rid of this, but we can learn to be with it in a way that makes us kinder and stronger and able to have more equanimity in the midst of storms. So practicing mindfulness can help in direct and indirect ways. We also know it relaxes the body, and a relaxed body can heal and see more options. It's not just reacting automatically. And so some ways to practice mindfulness, we talk about formal and informal practice. So formal practice is making a decision that every day or most days you're going to do something to build the muscle of mindfulness. I talk about practice as doing bicep curls for the mind, that we're just practicing being in the present moment. And when the mind wanders, we come back. And we're in our bodies, not just our heads, because the head is what creates the stories that the body then believes and gets tense. And there's a lot of intelligence here in this body. So there are many formal practices. There's yoga, there's Tai Chi, there's sitting meditation, there's body scans, there's mindful walking, mindful eating. There are all sorts of formal practices that you can do from 1 minute or 2 minutes a day to an hour a day. Whatever dose you need, right? Whatever dose you need in a particular moment. And you learn that by practicing. You learn that, wow, when I do 10 minutes of mindfulness practice in the morning, I feel better all day. And when I don't do it, I don't. And someone else might learn something different about them. Okay? And you don't have to like all the practices. You find what you like, and that may change too. And so for formal practice, you will have or should have already posted somewhere on your website a list or instructions to access a website where I include a lot of my guided practices. There's 20-minute chair yoga, there's 10-minute body scan or breath or focus meditation. So they're available. There are a million apps if that's what you're looking for. Every week through the summer at least, Brown is offering free mindfulness practices of varying lengths and various times. There's a heartfelt loving kindness mindfulness going. There's some yoga. I do a 15-minute mindful pause on Tuesdays from 11:45 to 12. So look on the website for those. There's also informal practice. And if you feel like, I just can't add one thing to my list, Informal practice is just bringing mindfulness to the things you are already doing. So chances are you take 10 steps somewhere in your day. You walk to the bathroom, you walk to the kitchen, or from your office to another office. You could just bring attention to the feet. So you're not in your head thinking about what you're going to do next. I feel my feet. I feel my feet. I feel my feet. Oh, I'm wondering about lunch, coming back. So that is all you're doing is attaching the mindfulness practice to what you're already doing, no extra time. But that could be 10 bicep curls for your brain. Taking a few sips of your morning coffee or tea or juice, but being fully present for it. Anything that you do regularly, shower and brushing your teeth. What if you could brush your teeth and be totally present? Then you have mindfulness practice for 2 minutes, once or twice a day, where you're fully present. That's it. And that is enough to get you started. Even a few minutes in the shower. I can't keep it up the whole time, but I always will take 1 minute to say, I'm here. I can feel the water. Oh, it feels good, like a pleasant moment. Be with it. So those are ways to practice. If you're really interested, take a class. All of this is hard to do alone. It's wonderful. Many of the organizations I'm working in, some of them even have mindfulness rooms. We are doing 8-week programs in these organizations so that there's a community who can keep practicing together. But you can also so you can talk to your companies and see if they want to do this, but you can also look for a class on your own. I know that I am very excited. I'll be teaching the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction class for lawyers online in the fall through UMass Memorial Healthcare. And, it's a 31-hour thing, so it's not for the faint of heart, but it's amazing. And the last one we did in person at Northeastern Law School, I think went over very well. And if you're not up yet to 31 hours, take a look. I lead 8-week programs. I'll probably be offering them on my own through, again, online in the fall, which is 8 hours for 8 weeks. And, look around to see what would work, because a community can make a big difference. And so if you do want to reach out to me, or you want to learn about anything that I'm doing, or you just have questions generally on mindfulness, please reach out. I am in the process of putting out a website that you can find at brendafingold.com, and there'll be a lot of information on what I'm doing there. And that will also link you to Brown University, where I continue to be an adjunct part-time teacher, to UMass Medical School, where I will continue to be an adjunct teacher. Right now I'm teaching at Mindful Leader organization. So I will link you out to other places, but feel free to contact me there. And I look forward to hearing from you if you're interested. Thanks for listening and watching.